Manly Hall official, is glad to produce, publish and offer. Mental hazards versus hereditary failures. Since the beginning of time man has leaned. It seems part of his nature to drape himself upon something or someone. In the beginning he leaned on the Lord, then he leaned on his relatives, and after many ages of evolution he finally learned to balance himself gracefully against his own spinal column. The world is so large that it would seem man could live in his own little plot without implicating others in the various phases of his growth. But this he is not able to do, and all through the ages he lives not either for himself, by himself, or with himself, but is eternally involving others in the complexities of his expression. He creates a very personal God to look after him and an even more personal devil to blame for all the misfortunes of his life. In other words, he surrounds himself with a series of self-created and mental hazards and scares himself to death with bugaboos of his own making. These bugaboos are many-fold in their expression, differing with the stages of development reached by the temperament creating them, and the more highly evolved the individual, the more spiritual and wonderful, complex and intricate, seemingly, is the bugaboo that he creates, until finally when he becomes proficient it is very difficult to differentiate between nature herself and man-made hazards which sometimes are so perfect that they will deceive the elect. Of all the mental hazards which people serve, that strange, weird figure known as the past is probably the greatest. Somewhere concealed in the family closet is this grinning skeleton which is the dowry bestowed by ancestry upon ensuing generations. A person without a past nowadays is like a servant without a reference, and little by little man is making ever worse pasts out of promising presents and unawakened futures. This grinning and rattling skeleton is now pedigreed and distinguished by being termed the family tree, and azure shields on gold backgrounds, etc., or a fistful of watercress, form the family coat of arms. Very few people will admit that they haven't got one of these peculiar creatures snuggled away in the family vault where every few minutes it points bony fingers at the next generation and whispers that not living creatures but mental concoctions of diseased intellects are to rule each generation of the world. In spite of the fact that we are living in a democratic age, most of our families are nourishing somewhere in their conservatories a family tree with the same love and sincerity that one of our tenement inhabitants might guard the solitary rubber plant on the windowsill. In the majority of cases this family tree is a weird and wonderful piece of horticulture, and like many of the Burbank variety carries more than one kind of fruit on a single stem. Often, we find lemons and prunes growing side by side with some luscious, rosy-cheeked apple, all nourished upon the single trunk of that family tree. Only in the human variety the luscious apple was Uncle Joshua who made 5 million out of Schuylitz, while the lemon is Aunt Samantha who married below her social position when she eloped with the gardener. So, the family tree grows on and on until at the very peak of this rather eccentric plant with its exotic fragrance, John Doe is born as a glorious orchid, bringing with him into the world of affairs a strange combination of mystic heterogeneities. If you're enjoying this video and finding value in the content, we kindly ask you to take a moment to subscribe to the channel. A large portion of our listeners and viewers haven't subscribed yet, and by doing so, you'll help us grow and continue bringing you more high-quality audiobooks. Your support means a lot to us, and it's just one click away. So, go ahead and hit that subscribe button to stay connected and never miss out on our latest releases. According to proud and doting parents, he is something as follows. He was born bald just like his great-grandfather, who was scalped by the Cherokee Indians. His bleared eyes came from his mother's side of the house, where his great-grandmother's sister-in-law went blind at the tender age of 103. He has a peculiar shaped face. As John Doe, his jaw is a little on one side. He inherited that peculiarity from his uncle, who had his own jaw smashed while fighting Moorish pirates. His big mouth he inherited from his grandmother, who talked a great deal, while his high cheekbones came from his great-granduncle's brother, who married an Indian squaw. From the very start in life, John was heavy, the same as his father's cousin, while he learned profanity at a tender age, the same as his great-granduncle's nephew who fought in the Civil War. He inherited the color of his hair from his mother, the shape of his teeth from his godfather, the size of his ears from the minister who baptized him, and his blurred complexion from his 11th cousin. In other words, when we gaze upon John Doe, we behold Joseph's coat of many colors and a grand composite coagination of hectic botany. And there he nestles amid the branches of the family tree, predestined and foreordained since the beginning of the world to be bow-legged, because his grandfather rode horseback. After he has been raised in this environment for a few years, his own little mind starts working, and he soon joins that great line of mystic shadow shapes that bow with humble reverence before the molding scarecrow of antiquity. And in a short time, he really believes that his grandsires have measured the possibilities of his worth, and that he will never be anything because an unkind fate placed him in a generation of failures, and because his family crest boasts only an ne'er-do wells. He soon believes that the main traits of his temperament are perfectly natural and desirable, because that temperament belongs with the heraldry of his house, and soon he is listed as just another little nut hanging on the family tree. We very often hear this as we go through life. No, I can't help it. I realize I have a mean disposition, but I inherited it from my mother. You should have seen the way she used to bend rolling pins and lead pipes around Papa's fourth cervical. It's an inherited trait, and there's not much use in trying to do anything with it. This mental frame is the incubator which hatches forth one after another the mental hazards and pedigreed non-entities which rule our lives after we once abdicate in their favor. It is for no other reason than this. At the present time, there are many people wandering through life on reputations, or who are considered great, strong, and noble because their aunt's sister had a husband who wore epaulets. Then, of course, we must not forget the titles which come down with the family tree. Anyone who has had that experience socially knows what it means to be acquainted with a count or a duke or a lord somebody, and with what zealous care these titles are re-silvered and nickeled for the express benefit of each new generation, when in many cases the inheritance consists of a title, scrofula, and bad bills. Take the average individual and show him his weak points, and he will lead you into the conservatory, and there, protected by a wonderful glass domicile, stands the hereditary elm, and he will, in a perfectly serious tone and an earnestness excruciating, explain to you exactly which branch was cracked when he came along. You tell him he is a liar. He will admit it freely, but will explain with perfect gravity that he can't help it, and he will point out a raisin dangling on the family tree that was a har also, and who wished his failing upon him about 300 years before the death of Cromwell. If you tell him he is dissipated, he will immediately reach into the foliage of said tree and pull you out a wild cherry that came over in the Mayflower, from whom he inherited his rakish temperament. If you tell him he is sour, he will point to the glorious yellow lemon on the family crest and explain to you that there was someone in his heredity responsible for it. If he is a failure, he will point out certain qualities in the prune that grows amid the shadows of the self-perpetuating elm, whose mental qualities were productive of failure in the nth generation. Slowly there dawns upon our minds the realization of a fundamental truth. The family tree is the greatest of all excuses for humanity's faults, and people who are too weak, too silly, and too hopelessly lacking in backbone to do anything themselves are continually blaming their ancestry for their own inherent weaknesses. It is very often the case that people who do not have family trees, or rather who do not know about them, are often far more successful than the offspring from generations, or shall we say degenerations, of admirals, marshals, and Lord Whatnots. The fact slowly impresses itself upon our consciousness that failures are individual, self-sustained combinations of intricate mechanisms that would never have been successes under any other conditions. The only cause of failure in a family tree is the mental hazard of this lonely elm, upon which hangs suspended anywhere from 1 to 100 generations of deceased ancestors who have gone to their happy rest and are not in any way worried over the work of implanting their qualities in their already suffering descendants. There is nothing on the family tree but fossilized concepts given power by those who believe in them. If these past generations were alive, they might cause success or failure, but as dead they can only affect dead ones, and those who allow the dead to run their lives are themselves listed with the deceased. Any living creature may be, if he so acts and lives, the first success in his family, regardless of the wizened appearance of the family crest or the drooping attributes of miscellaneous progenitors. It is also true that those who do not strive to live up to their best can in a few short hours disgrace the noblest heraldry that the world has ever known. Successes in this world are the ones who do things, who labor to master environments if they be evil, or to be worthy of them if they be good, realizing that all great things rise out of effort. Therefore, the worse the family tree, the greater the opportunity of the individual to shine out as an illustrious denial of his inherited debits. Then we have another type. They are the ones who, while unhampered by ancestry and unpolluted by blue blood, have gradually become failures through inherent qualities and mental reactions during their own lives. This type we generally list under the style of Type B. Their slogan is, "If you'd been through what I've been through, you wouldn't be anything either," or with variations something like this: "If I hadn't married so-and-so, I wouldn't be what I am now, or else, I never had a chance." There are several sub-varieties of this type as follows. I_always have had tough luck. Also, if your family treated you the way mine treated me and cheated you out of everything you had, you wouldn't talk either. And then the grand closing hymn, "It's my hard life, dearie, that's done it." These are sour apples grown and developed upon their own tree without the overshadowing presence of heredity. For such examples as these need no ancestry to produce failure, they are self-containing. There are a large number of people who do not seem to realize that the harder you are thrown down, the higher you bounce, but they spend the last 65 years of life in a spiritual wheelchair because they slipped on a banana peel when they were young. Once having made a mistake and having had a beware label hung on the heredity elm alongside of them, They feel that they are ruined forever and ever, amen, and believe it is their God-appointed duty to spend the remaining scores of their lives putting the capping stone on the general ruin. People who live in the past and, like Lot's wife, look back eternally upon the things they did in 64 or the scrape they got mixed up in 83 will never get anywhere mentally, physically, or spiritually. The thing for these people to do is to remember the lesson, forget the incident, and keep plugging, realizing that if they had never made a mistake, they could never enjoy the privilege of doing better. Then there is another type, grade C, who believe that they have been elected by the Most High and chosen by the Divine One to be the eternal brunt of his ill humor. There are thousands who honestly express themselves as believing that the Lord had a grouchy fit on when he made them and that he has been down on them ever since. They go through life manifesting the incarnated essence of concentrated gloom, dissolution, and despair, for no other reason on earth than that they firmly believe God has it in for them. Therefore, what's the use in trying? Anyhow, it is difficult to imagine what an awful feeling it must be to have God down on you and to know that the all-loving, all-wise, and kind Father has sent 77 deputations of demons with matrimonial problems, financial worries, kidney trouble, sour stomach, gloomy religion, and general indisposition to prod you continually with pitchforks of incessant catastrophe for no other reason at all than that you happen to be a blonde when the Lord likes brunettes. Yes, this exhibit is quite common, and those people who believe that stomach trouble is the vengeance of the Lord for missing church and that falling arches have been sent to man to teach him contrition of spirit or simplicity of soul are in a class all by themselves. In other words, a large percentage of our population are failures, but lamentably few of them believe that they have personally done anything to deserve it. They are all suffering from hereditary ailments, counting either their family tree or their God as the source. There are few who are strong enough to stand up before the world and honestly say that they are the one and only because of their shortcomings, that regardless of heredity or environment they can be successful when they will live in such a way that it is possible for them to secure balance. A family tree is a pedigreed nonentity which only affects those who believe in it. Past mistakes are only the seed grounds of future successes, and the idea of God's wrath which he showers upon us as brimstone and sackcloth is the greatest, most honored, and revered bunkum that the human race lists in its category of superstitions. If there is any person, creed, or religion that in your haste or thoughtlessness you look down upon or dislike, it is there that you must look for the help and development that you need. It is the plan of the great ones to show those on our plane of existence the great doctrine of universal brotherhood. They often teach this by sending the truths and knowledge that we need to us through those whom we dislike, and this great thought may be safely kept in mind in all stages of human development. A doctrine that is based upon a personality dies with that personality, while a teaching based upon principle is eternal. The veil of form that conceals the face of God can only be cut by the sword of enlightened spirit. Truth cannot be bought or sold, but it is the birthright of all who will live in harmony with it. Man is not a failure until he makes himself one, as no granduncle can do it for him. So long as he goes through life with a prickly disposition because his grandfather owned a cactus farm, he will be listed with the world's genuine failures, self-ordained and self-perpetuating. Great souls rise over adversity and use it as a stepping stone to heights above, while weak backbones bend beneath the load, blaming the Lord for the weight of the material which He has given them to build their tempo. So let us go out with Paris green and a prayer and set work on the family tree, effectively destroying the insects, bugs, grabs, etc., that are nestling in its branches and used by mortals as excuses for bag-like tendencies and worm-like consciousness in their daily lives. If there is any person, creed, or religion that in your haste or thoughtlessness you look down upon or dislike, it is there that you must look for the help and development that you need. It is the plan of the great ones to show those on our plane of existence the great doctrine of universal brotherhood. They often teach this by sending the truths and knowledge that we need to us through those whom we dislike, and this great thought may be safely kept in mind in all stages of human development. A doctrine that is based upon a personality dies with that personality, while a teaching based upon principle is eternal. The veil of form that conceals the face of God can only be cut by the sword of enlightened spirit. Truth cannot be bought or sold, but it is the birthright of all who will live in harmony with it. Man is not a failure until he makes himself one, as no granduncle can do it for him. So long as he goes through life with a prickly disposition because his grandfather owned a cactus farm, he will be listed with the world's genuine failures, self-ordained and self-perpetuating. Great souls rise over adversity and use it as a stepping stone to heights above, while weak backbones bend beneath the load, blaming the Lord for the weight of the material which He has given them to build their tempo. So let us go out with Paris green and AF, prayer and set at work on the family tree, effectively destroying the insects, bugs, grabs, etc., that are nestling in its branches and used by mortals as excuses for bug-like tendencies and worm-like consciousness in their daily lives. The emanation body functions by means of air while the physical body develops through food. The more one eats, the less one breathes, the less air, the more waste there is in the body. Science states that the average individual breathes 1/3 as much air as he should and eats about 3 times as much as he should. The result is disintegration and crystallization and general shortening of life. Evil is misplaced energy. It is the right thing in the wrong place. Whenever energy is misdirected, it tears down something, be this misdirection mental, spiritual, or physical. Laziness and ignorance are the causes of misapplication of energy, and we know that misdirected energy is the cause of all our misfortunes. The secret of youth is oxygenation, and the secret of death is carbonization. Misdirected and wasted energy destroys all things. The last of the shaman, dedicated to the memory of a dying people. The majority of people know little, if anything, of the American Indian, of his ideals, his hopes, and his fears, for there are few indeed who can pierce the stoic attitude of these people who, while they are fast dying, still preserve in the majority of cases the dignity and self-control which mark the ancient races. I was raised in an Indian country and from early childhood mingled more or less with this strange, broken people, now scattered remnants of what was once the most powerful of all rares. There is something very wonderful and fascinating in the study of the Indian, and I must say that I have always liked them. An invisible cord, a mystic bond, drew me even in my childhood to these wandering nomads, and I spent many years in the study of them. I lived not far from one of the greatest of the American Indian reservations, and have been with them many times, and maybe I am just a little liked by them too. I have seen young braves dashing madly on half-broken broncos and Indian ponies down the main street of the town, covered from head to foot with yellow ochre or green and blue aniline dye, shouting and screaming their war cries in truly terrible yet wonderfully fascinating ways. I have stood beside tall, blanketed figures in the years that are past, as in the drugstores they spent the money gained from horse selling and cattle raising for various colored pigments with which to smear their being. I have stood on the street corner where the squaws sat, surrounded by pottery and beadwork fashioned by their skillful fingers, crying out the value of their wares or cooing cradle songs to the little papooses fastened by thongs to their beds of wood. They are now but a broken people, these red men of the plains, and few there are who care much about them, few there are who concern themselves as to the fate of the Indian. Nor can you blame them, for everyone does not know the beauty, the sweetness, and the deep mysticism of their ancient, but now broken ideals. Every race, like every individual, plays its part in the great plan, and its work done vanishes from the light of men. In his soul the Indian knows that the path of his race is run, and while his heart is sad still the voice within whispers, and the old brave knows that the Great Spirit is calling his children home from the corners of creation, and calmly and serenely the aged warrior, philosopher, or statesman gathers the folds of his blanket around him and walks along that apparently endless way that leads to Manitou the mighty. Of course, I did not always feel as I do now, for I did not always understand the red man as I did after I met Uncle Joe. It was in a small town in the western states, where the main event of the day was the passing of the Southern Pacific, that I met probably the strangest Indian in America, yes, in the world. He always reminded me of that wonderful character created by Eugene Sue in The Wandering Jew, for it honestly seemed that this Indian had lived forever. Nobody knew where Uncle Joe came from, but some of the old-timers remarked that they guessed God made him with the country, nor did they realize how true those words were. Everybody agreed that he was over 100, but nobody seemed to know just how much over, and he never answered personal questions, and when you asked him, he would only grunt and wrap his blanket more closely about his face. There were very few people who were friendly with Uncle Joe, for he was a strange, lonely wanderer who belonged hundreds of years back when the red man was in his glory. He still wore the picturesque garb of his people, but he was very different from the Indian, and although his face was wrinkled and copper-colored, his heart was of pure gold. He was no fool either, was Uncle Joe, nor was he lacking in education, for he spoke better English than the white men who scorned him. It seemed he had traveled widely, also, for he could tell you of distant countries, and he spoke a dozen or more foreign languages. A polished gentleman in temperament and nature, he seemed a strange misfit among a rabble of half-breeds. Some said he was a great chief, others that he was the medicine man for a once mighty people, while the eternally suspicious ones whispered that he was a secret agent for the government. But when it came right down to it, all admitted that they did not know anything about Uncle Joe. Every few weeks he would mount his little Indian pony and head out all alone into the broken and rocky desert filled with broken mesas and shapeless crags which lay to the south of the town. Everyone used to wonder where he went and try to follow him. They would get just so far, however, each time, and then he would vanish as though the earth had swallowed him up, and no one ever found the secret which Uncle Joe guarded somewhere out among the painted rocks. I lived in the little town many months studying Indians and listening to the dinner bell when the trains pulled in, and my love and admiration for the strange wandering red man must have been felt by Uncle Joe, for he became very friendly with me, and we had many talks on the future of the red man, his history, his government, and his philosophy. Uncle Joe was no ordinary Indian, as I have said before, but a real scientist and philosopher whose knowledge and shrewdness of mind won my admiration from our first meeting. I became in the course of about 3 years his closest companion, for I was with him nearly all the time except when he would go out into the desert. Then he would say, "I go now into the hills. Someday I shall take you with me, but not now." In a short time, he would return, and then for many weeks we would be together again. So, the time passed and I learned much of the history of the red man, his secret customs, his religion, and his great ideals. Uncle Joe would sigh as he told me of the dead ambitions of his people, and now and then a tear would steal softly down his cheek as they spoke of the way of the Great Spirit and of the gods who had come to care for and instruct his people. One day, as the 3rd year of our acquaintance was drawing to a close, Uncle Joe laid his hand on my shoulder and his great black eyes seemed to look into my very soul. "I am going out into the desert," he said, "and I shall never come back again, for my gods have called me and my father's fathers have whispered to me in the night. In all the years that have passed I have never taken anyone with me on this trip, but today my gods have spoken and said that one at least of the coming race should know the secret of my dying people. So, if you will go with me out into the desert you may, and there you will know the reason why Uncle Joe has been here all these years and why no man has ever followed him." I jumped at the opportunity, for I knew that there was some great secret that the old Indian had been guarding all these lonely years, and so the next morning we started out together on 2 little pinto ponies in the direction of the broken ground which lay to the south. As we rode along, Uncle Joe told me some wonderful things about the Indians. Some of them I am not allowed to tell, but others may relate. He told me that among the red men was a mystic body who for thousands of years had kept the records of these wandering people. Little was known concerning them. They were hidden from even the Indians themselves, for they were a small body appointed by the Great Spirit to labor with his people. This little band of sacred ones had come out from the silent east where the rising sun rose. They came from a wondrous city of shining lights that had vanished forever beneath the waters of the mighty ocean. They were the priests of Mokdek, the priest kings of the ancient red men, arrayed in robes of birds' feathers and shining gold, possessors of the wealth of emperors and the wisdom of gods. These strange masters had brought out of the side-cut east the knowledge of the Great Spirit and had formed the red man into 7 great nations like the planets in the heavens. For thousands of years these wise men had labored with the Indian, who before that time had been a straying, savage race, dwelling on the outskirts of a more ancient civilization. They had brought with them along the path of the sunbeam the great serpent of wisdom and had guarded the red man's destiny all through the years of his development. But now the red man's work was done. The Manu was calling his people, and the Great Spirit had given to his sons the work of gathering in his broken tribes like the harvester gathers in his wheat. I listened while the old man spoke. It was all very wonderful to me to hear such words as these from the mouth of one whom the world called a savage, yet I realized, alas, more plainly than ever that the world has little power to judge who its philosophers are. We had been riding some time and slowly the broken stones rose up about us, bearing the marks of water on their rough-hewn sides, showing that once a mighty ocean had carved them by its ebb and flow. But now all was dry and dead, and here and there the whitened bones of some animal showed that, alas, water was but a memory of the past. We were on a tiny trail that wound in and out among the reddish rocks and shifting sands. Suddenly before us rose a mighty pinnacle of sandstone, and the twisting trail seemed to end at its base. The aged Indian stopped, raised his hand, and muttered a few words in his strange, guttural language, at the same time making the mark of the cross upon his forehead. That as he did so the rocks dissolved and a gateway appeared in the mighty sandstone mountain, and motioning me to enter the mystic Archuncle Joe followed me, and darkness surrounded us, for as we entered the rocky door closed behind us, leaving no mark upon the outer wall. For many hundreds of years, whispered my companion, this rocky cavern has remained unknown to the white man, and it always will, for in it is buried the lost people, and there are few who know the mysteries of the red man. Even the young brave growing up has forgotten and will never think again of the power of his sires. I remained spellbound at the strange miracle, for I had never believed in supernatural things up to that time. But as we rode slowly along in the gloom, a strange feeling of awe and reverence came over me for my companion. "Who are you?" I asked, "who have these strange powers and know so much of these ancient people?" My guide made no answer, but we continued on through the gloom until we finally came out into the light on a beautiful little plateau way up on the side, or a mighty mesa. Here the Indian dismounted and I followed suit, and we stood together overlooking a grand expanse of rolling and broken country which stretched out to the distant mountains, a mass of brown and yellow sand in strange relief against the glorious blue of the summer sky. The old Indian waved his hand. "Behold the land of the red men, now a broken desert. Water alone made this a fertile land, and the waters of life pouring out from the heart of the Great Spirit alone made the red men a great race. No longer the waters come forth, for the work of the red man is done, and soon he will be as dead and broken as the desert which stretches before you. But come, my son, child of another people, you are the first white man who has ever lived to enter the presence of the red man's God." Taking me by the hand, Uncle Joe led me to a small opening in the side of the cliff, just a narrow slit which led into unknown depths. I passed in and the Indian followed me, and after going some 100 feet into the mountain, the crevice broadened out and became a great room dimly lighted by a blazing fire of mighty logs. Of living inmates there was no sign, but the whole room was filled with ghastly figures. In a great circle sat a row of mummies robed from head to foot in the grandeur of the red man, preserved against decay in that subtle atmosphere by some force unknown. 12 of them sat cross-legged upon the floor, and in the center of this ghastly circle was a great throne before which burned the fire of never-consuming grandeur. The great throne was empty and seemed of solid gold, with a glorious sun globe and the thunderbird carved upon its back. The aged man pointed around the ghastly circle. "These, my son, are the chiefs of the red men. They were the last of the line of priest kings who dwelt here and who came out of the land of the sky-blue waters. One by one they have passed beyond to the land of their ancestors. Each time one of these great ones died, the hand of Manitou was cut off from a race of the red men. One after another they have been carried here, and in the heart of this mountain of red sandstone they lay, mute testimony of faithfulness to the end. They were the order of Mokdek, the priest sachems of the roving nomads of the world. Here you see all that is left of them, my son. Their spirits have returned to the Great Father, for their work is done. Their children cry in the wilderness for the man who has called them, and one by one they join that silent 10 throng, passing over to the blessed isle. No longer can the hand of the gods guide them, for their work is done. One by one they are gathered in and taken over to another shore, where some day they will come forth again a mighty people. The old Indian leaned heavily on my arm as he was talking, and slowly we went out again into the sunshine of the day. The red man sat down upon the ground on the edge of the cliff, and there we talked for many hours, and he told me the glories of his dying people and begged that someday I would tell the world of the wonderful labors of his race. Slowly the shades of evening fell, and the short purple twilight that divides the day from the desert night hung over the plains and prairies and the broken desert which stretched out before us. The evening star rose a glorious light in the heavens, and the whole world seemed to rest, save where here and there the howl of a coyote broke the eternal silence. The old Indian pointed unto the gathering clouds, whispering, "Look." As I did so, a great procession seemed to form out of the mist, and crossing the sky in endless train they vanished where the last dull gleams marked the setting sun. "They are the dying race," whispered my companion, "and I am one of them. Each night as I sit alone or wander in the desert, I can see my people passing slowly by one after the other. Long since I have buried my race, and there out in the desert a few broken sticks alone mark their resting place. No longer does the smoke rise from their peaceful tents, no longer do the white wigwams the plain, never again shall the red man hunt the bison, no more shall he rise at sunrise on the mountain peak to worship the Great Spirit. See them, my son, see them, one chief and priest, brave and squaw, are passing on in an endless file to the home of the gods. Just a few short years and they will be no more. The hand of the gods feeds them no longer, their work is done, why should they stay? Remember, my son, they go not like slinking coyotes in the night, like cowards crawling away from the field of battle. They go like kings and emperors, for they know that their work is done. They go not as failures to the chastisement of their gods, but as those who have finished, claiming their rewards. The white man will never know the red man, for the white race has made him a stranger in the land of his birth, a nameless vagabond in the beautiful world created for him. But it is well. For as today the red man sinks away into the eternal night, so shall the white man, when his day is done, drop silently to rest. All the while he was speaking, the endless procession swept across the sky. Mighty chieftains in robes of wampum and wore bonnets of eagle feathers, braves on desert ponies, squaws and children, medicine men with the heads of buffaloes, and priests with their feathered staffs, a ghostly file of specters passed on in triumphant march, all with heads up, eyes to the front, and with a dignity and regal grandeur which bespoke a strange pathos, yet a sweet and masterly understanding. The old Indian beside me gazed longingly at the passing throng and pointed upward to the stars. "Look, my son, my people's campfires are burning in the heavens." I followed his finger with my eyes, and there unrolled to me in the sky millions of little campfires stretched out as far as the eye could see, millions of little teepees flowing in the ethers, and the dull murmur as of reverent prayer. "That, my son," whispered the old Indian, "is the bivouac of the dead. I can see them every night, and as the shades of evening fall, the braves dash across the sky hunting the buffalo or float in their beautiful canoes down the rivers of stars. Still again through the night there comes to me the plaintive wail of the moonlight as the Indian youth plays his love tunes, the smoke of the signals on the hills, and the sound of the ancient war drum. Once again, the great braves gather from all their peoples to listen to the words of their chieftains. It is all gone, now, my son, but still, it lives in the world of spirit, and there it is eternal. And I am old, for I have lived since the red man was born. I was with him in the days of his youth, I was with him in the years of his glory, and one by one I have laid their wise to rest. From the mighty land of the Sioux, from the tribes of the Algonquians, from the Muscogene and the wandering Iroquois, even to the distant Shoshonees, I am known. Each time that one of the great ones have died, it is I who in the silence of the night have walked from mountain top to mountain top with his body in my arms. I have brought him here to the cave of the sandstone mountain, in whose darkness my secret shall be locked forever, and never until the time when Manitou the mighty shall roll away these mountains shall the 12 priests of Mokdek be found, for no white man shall desecrate them, no curious eyes shall pierce this darkness, no heathen laugh shall awaken their slumbers, no vandalizing grave robbers shall in the name of science disturb their resting place. They may search through the 7 stars, but they will never find the secret of the red man, for as he passes silently into the great beyond, he carries with him the truths of his creation. The years draw nigh when the end is at hand. I know, for I am the spirit of the red man. None know where I came from, for I came not, I am. None know where I shall go, for I go not, I am. Each of my red brothers who is laid to rest knows me, I feel his going, and a drop of my own soul joins with his, a cloudy phantom of the night. One by one they pass away, their young braves live other lives, and the red man is forgotten. At last, the 12 have come, for in the silence of the night I brought the last. My people shall wander for a little while with man, but their spirit is gone, gone back across the great waters to the Father, to wait until the appointed day when they shall come forth again on other wheels and in another race. The spirit of the white man rules the red man now, and we bow before another God. It is well, for all things work for the Great Spirit and the Father of fathers, whose home is by the great waters, where he watches the tiny grains of sand that dash upon the seashore. But the order of Mokdek is no more. A few scattered seekers there are among my people, but they wander among strange gods, for in this day is sealed forever the order of the kings. The tears were rolling down my cheeks as he told his pathetic story, and yet it is a grand story, the story which is written in the soul of every red man, unless his lonely heart has found rest under the banner of the White King. At last, I spoke. You say you have lived through all the ages of the red man? The old warrior nodded his head. I have lived with them, and, my son, I die with them, for they are my chosen people. I came to them with the glory of the rising sun, as it rises a ball of fire from the silent waters. I rode across the heavens with them as their great orb of day brought with it peace and power. I fought with them through the storms of winter and loved with them through the calm of summer, and now that the sun of the red man is sinking and the last of the vanishing race is being led silently to rest, I go with them. For the sun will rise some day in a distant land, and there I shall be once more the spirit of the sunrise, as now I am the overbrooding angel of the night. This, my son, is the message of the red man, a wondrous people who in the years that are past and now covered with the sands ruled the world, whose libraries and universities were the glory of creation, whose scientists were the marvels of the world, whose domed temples and mystic arches rose to the skies in every land of earth. Listen, a voice calls from within. It is the voice of the ages, for the pyramid builder speaks through me this night. The pharaohs of Egypt are still alive in my blood. The phantom of the Manu, he, too, is with me, and in my soul is the heart of the dying Montezuma. Amid the Andes, through the mystic caverns of the Sierra Madres, among the broken Everglades that border the shores of Okeechobee, along the silent Nile where the great stone faces gaze peacefully through the night, I wander and I am one with them. Yes, I am the spirit of the red man. You ask who I am. That has been asked before. Once I answered, I am the morning star. Later I answered, I am the star that shines with the glory of the sun. Still later, as my people sank to rest, I was the evening star who whispered of an eternal peace. But now it is all different, for now I am the spirit of the night, and you may call me silent tongue, for I speak and there are none who hear my words. I am the last of the shaman, the last of the priest kings who came out of the lost Atlantis. I am the last who was ordained in the temple of the rising sun. I am the last to bear the mark of the serpent. As he spoke, he dropped his blanket and tore 12 away the shirt which he wore, and there upon his heart and twined upward across his chest was a strange serpent tattooed in vivid pigments upon his breast. The upturned head of the serpent coiled around his neck, while its little beady eyes and forked tongue seemed to end where the upper cervical vertebrae join the skull. That is the mark of Mokdek, he whispered, a mark no living man knows from one end of the world to the other. It is the mark of Quetzalcoatl, the mark of the feathered serpent who is dead forever. I am the last living thing to bear that mark which was placed there 4 million years ago. I looked at the Indian for several seconds as if doubting his words, but one look into those terrible eyes of living fire and I realized I was not gazing at a man but a god. Wait a few minutes, he whispered, rising, then come back into the cave, for there are other things that I would that you should know. And he left me gazing out at that endless procession of figures that still crossed the skies silently as the stars in their course. I waited for several seconds, and then a voice whispered to me to rise and enter the cave. As I did so, I gave a startled cry. In the great throne surrounded by the 12 dead sat the aged Indian we knew as Uncle Joe. He was robed from head to foot in the garb of the red man, covered with jeweled ornaments and the finest wampum. His bronze body shone in the flickering light of an endless fire, and his war bonnet of eagle feathers reached nearly to the floor even from the height of the throne chair. On his forehead was a cross of living gold, and from his breast the snake gleamed forth in many-colored lights, while the feathered staff he carried as a scepter swayed slightly as his arms moved. My son, the last of the red men, the last of the priests, has been called to rest. They were my kingdom, and now I am an emperor of the dead. You shall see me no more, for I go to the land of the setting sun. The Manitou has called me and I obey. But, remember, my son, there is no death. I go on to other works, to other lands, for I am the spirit of the red man, and I can never die, but will live on forever to guard the destinies of my people, who while their race is broken still live and will continue their endless procession until the day when the All-Father shall call home even Manitou the mighty. Somewhere in the bonds of the infinite we shall meet again, you and I, for you, too, are chosen of your gods. When your race is drawn silently into the unknown, I shall ask the Manitou the privilege of being there that I may greet another people coming home. Behold the order of Mokdek, the sacred brotherhood of the red men, the priest kings of Atlantis, for they are now in session for the last time. The fire that has burned for ages will soon go out, and with it vanishes the last of the red men. No more the world shall see me, for on this throne I sit awaiting the last of my people. Though years may pass before they gather, I shall be sitting here, surrounded by the dead, the emperor of a dying race. So as you go out into the world and people ask you what has happened to Uncle Joe, just tell them he is waiting, waiting through 2 hours of the night, waiting with the jury of the dead, waiting for the last log to burn and his people to come home. In the ages that are past I said that I would become strong and worthy to be given charge of the red man. In many worlds and for many ages I have filled that trust, even until today. So here I shall wait in the cave, for it is not long, already my spirit is calling me from somewhere over the distant hills, and even as I speak another red man's soul passes me on the way to rest. I wait as sometime you must wait for the last whisper of the dying, and here I remain until the last one goes, when I shall seal the book of my works and return to my Maker. Goodbye, you have heard my words. Never seek me again, for no man shall know where I have gone. But remember that my spirit waits in the darkness of this cave for the last of my people in the mountain of red sandstone. And when they come, I shall gather them lovingly to rest, and then with the spirit of the 12 priests of Mokdek I shall go before my Creator with the glory of 1,000,000 emperors, the power of kings, and the light of the rising sun, and the serpent of wisdom, whom the world knows only as Uncle Joe, the last of a dying race, the last of the red men. Copyright 2025 by Manly Hall Official. Thank you for listening. Please consider to subscribe, like, and share to help the channel growth, new videos on a daily basis.